Welcome back. In this video we're going to be completing our title screen, and the first thing we're going to do is change our font from this rather boring Arial looking font here to something more interesting. Now Unity can import any TrueType font and use that in your project. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab a font from the Google Fonts project, which is a huge list of open source fonts. So it's particularly good for games because they're under a nice friendly license that you can use in your games, and also they have a web friendly version of them as well, so you can use the same fonts on your games websites or wherever else you need to use the font for branding. So the font we're going to use is a font called Chewy, which is this font over here, and we can preview it and see what it's going to look like. Run bunny run, for instance, and we can make it nice and big and see that it looks like the font we want. So all you do really is you add it to your collection, and then you hit this download link over here and you download it as a zip file. So that will download this file for us, which we can open up. And I'll just minimize that. So I'm just going to grab the font and drop it on my desktop. And this font, if you look at the license, is under the Apache 2.0 license. So that's free for use in your games or wherever you want. All right. So in Unity, we're going back to Unity now, we can go and create ourselves a fonts folder. And into that folder, we can drag our Chewy font. And now that the font is in our system, we can pretty much just go and find our button. So we can find our canvas, our button start, select the text object, and use the little picker icon over here. Click on that and use Chewy as our font, and it's changed our font for us. We can also, at this point in time, let's set the font to this kind of brown color that's in our bunny here, so that kind of the colors start to match. So we're going to do 72, 44, and 17 to get our brown color in our font. And we can save that with Control S and press play. And we now get our button and then back into our game. Alright, so if we make sure that scene is saved and go to our scenes folder, and we'll switch over to our game scene. We can now update our scores as well, our text scores and our label for that. So if we select text score, we can make it the Chewy font as well, set its color, 72, 44, and 17. Cool. And we can increase the font size to something much bigger, like 60. We'll switch back to the scene view so we can see what we're doing over there. And we'll do the same. We'll need to resize the field, but firstly, let's take the label, also set it to the Chewy font, size to 60, set the color from white to that brown color, 72, 44, and 17. Oops, no, 17. Alright. Let's grab the label for the score and kind of drag it out so we can, till we see the word score, hopefully, somewhere. There we are. And do the same with our actual score. There we are, 999. Oh. There, and bring that back into line. Make sure the two line up. All right, it should be good. So if we run this, there we are. We get our nice score being updated with our nice new font. All right. Save that up. Cool. Now, if we go back to our title scene, We can see this button here is kind of ugly, just a big white button, and we need to want to fix that up, and we also want to add our title text to say "Run Bunny Run" across the top there. So to do this, we're going to use an open source program called Inkscape, which you can download from inkscape.org. I'll put a link in the notes below. And Inkscape is an open source vector graphics program, so you can draw graphics using vectors. It's kind of like Adobe Illustrator, but being open source, it's free, and it uses SVG or scalable vector graphics as its base format. So if you just download that and install that, you'll be good to go. Now, before launching Inkscape, however, we're going to want to use our Chewy font in some of our designs. So what we need to do is install the Chewy font into our system fonts. And on Windows, you just open up the Windows Fonts folder, and then you can drag the Chewy font into there and install it. I already have it installed, but you just hit yes to install. I'll override it, and it install the font for us. Excellent. And then I will launch Inkscape. Now, if you make a change to the system fonts, the Inkscape will take a little longer to start up the first time through, as it's busy processing all the fonts in the font folder. And if you have a lot of fonts like I do, it could take a little while. So just give it a moment to wake up. But whilst it's doing that, if we go back into Unity and in our canvas, if we pick our button, you'll see this diagram, or this image over here, which is our source image, which is our UI sprite. And you'll see that this is basically the sprite that is used to draw the button. So the thin black border and the white interior. And you'll see that it's 32 by 32 pixels big. You also see that it's sliced up into 9 sections. So this is called, just toggle back there, this is called a 9 slice image, and pretty much what Unity does is it uses these 9 pieces to draw out the button at any size. So what you'll see if you look closely, if we zoom in on here, is that it's taken the corner of the image and used those as the corner of the button, and there and there, and then it's used these center sections there, there, and there, and there, and repeated them along the edge and along there. So this allows Unity to have variable size buttons, but with different backgrounds. And you don't have to draw an image like this. You could have like square corners and little notches edited out, or whatever you want. So what we're going to do is we're going to create ourselves a new one of these using Inkscape, and use some of the colors that we have in our bunny, some of these browns and the like, to create a better looking button. So now that Inkscape is loaded in the background there, this is Inkscape when you start it all up. I'll just close these panels here so that it's more like what you'll see when you start up Inkscape. So the first thing we're going to do is go to the File, Document Properties, and this will bring up the Document Properties window. And over here you can see, if you're designing for print media or whatever, you have various page sizes. What we want to do is set this to our size of our button sprite. So we first select the units of pixels, and then we're going to make it 32 pixels by 32 pixels. Alright, so that's all that little tiny one there, and we can use this button over here, which is zoom to fit page, or you can press the 5 key and zoom to fit page, and this is our page now. That is, if you look across there, 32 by 32 pixels big. Alright, so we're going to grab the Create Rectangle tool, this one over here. I'm going to click on that, and we're going to click and drag out a rectangle. I'm going to draw this rectangle over here. If you have a rectangle selected, or you've just drawn the rectangle and you go back to the rectangle tool, you'll see you can edit the properties of the tool here. So what we're going to do is we're going to set the size to be 32 pixels by, actually no, let's set that to 30 pixels by 30 pixels. And we're going to set the corner radiuses, which is how steep these corners are. We're going to set those to 8 and 8. Cool. So this is I just press the minus key to zoom out a little. You can press the plus key to zoom in, minus key to zoom out a little. Alright, so this is our shape, but you can see the outline of the shape, or the stroke, is quite fat, and it's extending our boundaries, and it's not quite the right colors. So what we can do is, from the object menu, you can pick the fill and stroke option, and that will open up our fill and stroke menu. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set the fill to be a flat color. You can also do gradients and other things if you wanted to, but we're going to use a flat color here, and we're going to set the actual color to a value of 201, 152 and 105, which is the kind of light brown from our bunny. On the next tab across, the stroke paint, once again we're going to do a flat color, and we are going to set it to our brown color, which is 72, 44 and 17. Alright, and then on the stroke style tab, you can set how wide or how fat the stroke is, and you can set all corners and joins and stuff. We're just going to set the width to 1 pixel. So that now is a nice thin border around our button shape. Alright, now we want this, which is 30 pixels by 30 pixels wide in a 32 by 32 pixel box. We just want to center it on there. So what we can do is, once again, go to the object menu and select the align and distribute option, and that will open up a new panel. And with by selecting our select tool, making sure our square is the selected object, we have a bunch of alignment objects. So the first thing we do is we want to align it relative to the page, or in this case our 32 pixel by 32 pixel area, and we can click this button here, which is center on the vertical axis, and the other button here, which is center on the horizontal axis, and so that will ensure that our shape is nice and centered. Okay, so all we can do now is we go to our file save menu, and we'll get to save our image, or our button shape. So we're going to go to the tutorial folder. I'm going to create a art directory and then a UI directory, and into that we're going to save this as button 9 slice. And you'll see this is saving it as an SVG, or scalable vector graphic, which is can be used in a bunch of other programs and as shapes in web pages and things like that as well. So button 9 slice, and we'll save that. Okay, so now we need to get this into Unity, and the way we do that is if we go to the file menu and we can say export PNG image. This will bring up the export option panel for us. The first thing to do is we don't want to export just the selection, we want to export the entire page. So if we click on the page option there, and we double check that we wanted to export at the width of 32 pixels by 32 pixels. And then we've got to tell it where we want to export it to. So we're going to say export as, and we're going to find our folder with our, or rather, on the D drive rather. And in our assets directory, into our sprites folder where all our other sprites are, we're going to save a PNG called button 9 slice, and save that there. And then the last thing we're going to do is press the export button, which actually does the export for us. And then you'll see that that little asterisk at the top here indicates the file's changed. That's because we've now changed the export options. So once again, we just go File, Save to make sure that we've saved all of that with our SVG file. Right, so toggling back to Unity now, in our sprites folder, we will have a new sprite called button 9 slice. And what we need to do is it's 32 by 32 pixels big. And that it is a sprite 2D and UI, so it's of a texture type suitable for using in the UI. What we want to do now is tell Unity where to slice it up, and we do that by clicking on this sprite editor button, and that brings up the sprite editor window, and we can then drag these edges, and we want to drag it to the point where we get a large chunk of repeating stuff. So we're going to drag that into there and that one into there so that this bit's all repeating. And we're going to drag this down to about there. There's a color change there, and drag this up to about there as well. Alright, so that's where we want our slices to be. And then we can click on the Apply button. Alright. Close down the sprite editor window. Going back to our button now, selecting our button, we can now use the pick tool to go and pick our button 9 slice, and we have our nice shaped button. So if we press play now, there we are, and we've got tinting and rollover, and we can click through and play our game and back out again the other side. Alright. So that sets up our button for us, and we can use that for any number of buttons if we have more than one button on our title screen. Alright. So what we want to do next now is actually create our title graphic, saying Run Bunny Run across the top there. Just save this up. And we're going to use Inkscape to do that as well. But right now we need kind of, if we play the game, we can have all sorts of different aspect ratios, and so really we need to get a handle on some guidelines of where to put our image and how big to make it for our title text. So what we're going to do is on the game tab, under this area here, we hit the little drop down, and we're going to hit the plus sign to add a custom aspect ratio or resolution, and we're going to call this one half HD, and we're going to make it a fixed resolution type as opposed to an aspect ratio, a fixed resolution type. And this is good for testing different screen sizes. You'll see later on when we switch to building the mobile version of the project, we can set it to match the screen or the resolution of different devices, so we can see how our app will look on those different devices. But for now, we're going to do it at half HD, so half of a 1920 by 1080 HD resolution. So we're going to set it to 960 by 540. All right, and we're going to pick that. So this is half HD. Okay, and so what we're going to do now is we're going to screen grab that and use that as a template for designing our shape, our logo in Unity. So under Windows, to screen grab, we can press Alt Print Screen, and that should grab us a screenshot. And I'm just going to Alt S and load up MS Paint, and I'm press Control V to paste my screen grab into there. And then I'm going to use the selection tool to carefully select just that border just around the actual diagram. Try to get it as exact as possible. That looks goodish. And then I'm going to crop. That looks pretty good. And then from the select menu, I'm going to select all, and I'm going to press Control C to copy that. Alright, switching back to Inkscape, I'm going to go to the File menu. I'm going to go File, New, and that will give me a new document. And I'm going to go back to the File Properties, File, Document Properties, and I'm going to set it to match our screen resolution of 960 and 540. Alright, and then I'll press Control V to paste our image in there, and then with it selected I can go to our Align and Distribute option, little panel, make sure Page is selected, and then do Center and Center, and then I can use the Zoom to Page there, and I can zoom it out. The other thing we can do at this one, we can also go from the View menu, you can also go Zoom 1:1, which then will zoom it out to the actual resolution that it is. So that's a good place to start. All right, and now we want to draw our text on top of here, or our title text on here. But first, let's lock down this background so we can't edit it accidentally or move it accidentally, and also so that we can hide it later on when we want to export our title. So if we go to the Layer menu and pick on Layers, you'll see that we currently have a layer called Layer 1, and that's the default layer that we've put this image onto. If we double click that, we can rename it to Background, and if we hit this little padlock icon on the back here, it means we can no longer click or select any objects on there, so it's locked down from editing. And later on we'll be able to hit the little eye icon to hide or show that particular layer. So we'll leave it visible for the moment, and then we're going to create a new layer, and we're going to position above the current layer, which is the background layer, and we're going to call this title text and add. All right, so let's create some title text. So from the text tool, if you click on that icon there, you can click, and we're going to type our text, run bunny run, and you can press Control A to select all the text, and that means any changes we make to the text will apply to all that selected text. So the first thing we're going to do is choose a new font, or choose our Chewy font. So if we do a search in here, we can find Chewy. There's our Chewy font there, and we're going to make it much bigger than that. So let's make that 90 points big. It's nice and big. And if we switch to the selection mode, we can now position that better. We should also we can also set the colors in this. So if we go back to our fill and stroke panel, we once again want to do a flat color for the fill, and we're going to do the same kind of light brown that we used on the buttons. So 201, 152, and 105. Yep. And then for the stroke, we're going to do a flat color for the stroke, and we're going to set that to our darker brown, which is 72, 44, and 17. Right. And then for the actual stroke style, we're going to make that quite a bit thicker and set it to 4. So nice, thick, round font. All right. So that looks pretty good, but let's give it a bit more character. So what we want to do is we want to curve the font, or bend the font, put it on a bit of a curve. So to do that, what we can do is use this icon over here, the Bezier curve and straight lines drawing tool. Select that, and we're going to draw a point there, a point there, and a point there. And you can right click to stop drawing points, and it will draw a line for us, or a line, 2 line segments there. But we want to make this a bit of a curve, because what we're going to do is we're going to get Inkscape to fit the text to that line. So what we can do is if we choose the edit paths by nodes tool, and you'll see that we now can click or drag or edit these little points. So we're going to select the center point, and we're going to go up to this option here, which is make selected node smooth. We click that, and now we see we actually have a curve with drag handles, so we could curve it in interesting ways. But we are going to make it, or not auto smooth, back to curve, and make it, now that I fiddled with it, we probably need to make it back to being, where's my symmetric? Auto smooth, symmetric, there we are, just to make sure that I haven't messed anything up with the handles. So what we can do is we can maybe click and drag that up a little bit more, give it a bit more of a curve. Yeah, and then we can go back to the select and transform option. All right, so we've got that line over there. We can click and drag it a little down, and now we want to fit the text to this curve or to this path. So what we're going to do is we select our text, and then holding down Shift, select the path. So we've selected both those pieces, and then on the text menu we can say put on path. Awesome. So now we have our text on the path there. I think I'm going to want to make that text a little bit more pointy. So back to the tool, hover over that point. Should be able to drag that up or drag that down. You can drag it wherever you want, but I'm going to drag that up a little bit more. All right. Cool. So there's our text fitted to our path. I think I like that. Now we just need to hide the path. So the easiest way to do that is to just select the path and go to the fill and stroke menu, and under the fill tab make sure there's no fill, and under stroke make sure there is no stroke, and that will hide it for us. So the path is still there, and if you do need to edit it, it might be a little tricky to find if it's invisible, but you can go to the view menu and under display mode say outline, which just shows you the outline of all your shapes, so that will then let you be able to pick your path again if you need it. And you can go back to the view mode display, the view menu display mode, and select normal to get everything back the way it is. All right. So what we want to do now is give that a little bit more depth. So we can select that, and we can go to the edit menu and say duplicate, which makes an exact copy of it. And what we're going to do is we're going to fill the copy with our dark brown color, and we're just going to cheat by copying and pasting the RGBA value out of the stroke. Go to the paint menu, the fill tab, and fill that there. Right, so we have a nice dark one. All right, and you'll see that our duplicate is sitting on top of our original. So at the section over here, you have a bunch of options to push objects backwards, or bring them to the front, or lower them up and down in Z depth on the current layer. So what we're going to do is, with that one selected, we're going to go back, and it will push it to the back, but it's still selected. And then we're going to use the left and right keys, the left and right cursor keys. We just have to focus on there. Oops. Okay. I'm going to pick that one, send it to the back, and with it selected, we can just drag it around a bit, and I might send it to the back and then drag it around a bit, just to give it a little bit of a shadow. You can also use the cursor keys or the arrow keys just to nudge things around. I think I'm going to leave it, might be too much, just like that, just to get a bit of a 3D look by having two layers on it. All right. I'm now going to drag and select all of these, both those objects, and drag a box around there, so that will select both my pieces of text. And then from the object menu, you can group them together. And I'm going to find the background, and I will hit the little eyeball icon on in our layers panel, just to hide that. So we just got our text shape there. And from our file menu, I will save it. I'm going to save it into our Bunny Run tutorial. I've created an art folder. The previous one would have created at the top level, another UI there, and I'm going to create something called title text. Save that. And then in our export panel, which you can get by going File, Export PNG Image, we want to export just this object now, which is now one object because I grouped them together. So at the bottom here, you can see that it's a group of objects. So we're going to select it, and we're going to say we want to export the selection this time, and we're going to export it as into our assets folder, into our sprites folder, and we're going to export it as title text. And then we're actually going to trigger the export. Cool. And once again, file, save our SVG, and we can now go back to Unity. So in Unity now, we will have a brand new title text image. There it is over there, which says Run Bunny Run, with our transparent background that we want to now put into our scene. So what we're going to do is on our canvas, we can right click on the canvas and go UI, and we're going to add an image. That will create a new image for us. And as the source for that image, we can drag our title text into there, or you could pick it with the picker, and that creates a title text in an image. You can see it's all kind of squished up, and that's because we've got the width and height set to 100. If we click this set native size option down at the bottom, it will resize it for us. And now we can click and drag that and position that above our button. So in our game scene, that will look something like that. I think we can go a little higher. Cool. And we can also rename the image to something more meaningful, like title text. Awesome. Okay. And there's our title text. So if we have a look at it at different ratios, it looks good at 16:9, but at 3:2 it's pretty good. 4:3 it's not too bad. 5:4 it's starting to get a bit close to the edges, and if we had a really wacky aspect ratio, we might land up chopping pieces off. So really we want to ensure that our title text stays on the screen all the time. And what we can do to do that for us is tweak a setting on the canvas. So if we go back to our canvas object that's holding our button and our title text, all right, we have a couple of options here. We've around the UI scaling mode, and currently it's set to a constant pixel size, so it will always be just these pixels with a scale factor of 1. And what that means is if we did have a very, say, a portrait layout, it would chop things in half, or if we had a very tiny screen or some weird aspect ratio, it would chop off our title. So what we can do instead is we can change our UI scaling mode, and we're going to change it to is scale with screen size. Okay, and you see now it's changed a little bit. And what we're going to do, what this does is it's going to use a reference resolution, and then we're going to define how we would like to scale based on that reference resolution. And since we originally designed it for that half HD in terms of back in Inkscape, this kind of proportion and the ratios we wanted. If we go back here, what we can do is we can say that our reference resolution is 960 by 540, and then we have a screen match mode which says match width or height, which we'll leave that at that. And then we can control with the match, we can determine how much of the width or the height it's trying to match to. So what we're going to do is we're going to put it right in the middle at 0.5. So it's going to use a constant ratio between the width and the height as a reference resolution to scale our text and all our UI components. So if we go back to the game now, this is what it looks like at our reference resolution, which pretty much should match the style that we had inside Inkscape. And if we choose different resolutions like 5:4 or 4:3, we can see that it's keeping it nicely in proportion, and will ensure that it won't get chopped off when we run at different resolutions. So we'll put it back to 16:9. Alright, so if we file save that and run, alright, we have our game with a nice title text on the top, our imagery, all our things scrolling behind, start button, all our updated fonts and scores, and the ability to exit back. Cool. So our title screen is complete. So that's pretty much it for this video. In our next video, we'll be looking at making some tweaks to our game so that it is mobile friendly, and then we'll start looking at building our game for a variety of platforms. So as always, please like this video if you liked it, share it with others if you think they find it interesting, and remember to subscribe so that you can receive notifications when I post new videos. Thank you for watching.